Okay, so installing the truss rod, this is a pretty simple process, but you do need specific tools to do it. So just as a review from the last videos, what we have here is the neck blank, center line's drawn, preliminary nut line is drawn here, and the outline of the neck is drawn. So the truss rod, as I mentioned in the previous video, this stabilizes the guitar neck. It provides you to a way to adjust it, and it also prevents it from warping, at least drastically. There's always going to be a little bit of tension because of the strings, but this truss rod will go both directions. It will bow back and up. So the way that we install this is with a router. A router, if you don't know, will it provides a way to cut into the wood and adjust the different depths. It's a lot better than trying to drill many different holes. So two ways to do it. You can use a plunge router, which is right there. You can adjust the depth on that, or you can use a router table. So with the different types of truss rods that you have, there's advantages and disadvantages to both. So depending on where your nut adjustment is at with the truss rod. So for instance, this is an Allen key adjustment. So an Allen wrench will, let me try to focus this. An Allen wrench will adjust this. But you can see that it's kind of notched at the top. So one thing we don't want to do, we don't want to just plow the whole thickness of this down into the neck, because then we're going to have a gap either at the top or the bottom. So if we didn't care about having a gap at the top or the bottom of the adjustment and going the full thickness down to not leave out this notch here, if we didn't care about that, then we could take it to the router table and start at this end and just keep running thickness down until we get to where we want. But what's going to be a little bit easier, it doesn't give you as straight of a line. This is hidden by the fingerboard, so it's not as big of a deal, but I'm going to use the plunge router, and that way I can take it at the different depths that I want it to and adjust for everything that I need. So I'll set the camera down, get everything adjusted, and we'll kind of go from there. Okay, we are back. So right now we dry fit the truss rod in there, and we got a good fit. It's below the surface, which is what we want. There's not a lot of wiggle room in there. One thing you don't want when you install a truss rod is you don't want a rattle. That not only can pick up the vibrations from the strings and from the sounds as you're playing, and it'll rattle, but if you're moving it around, it can rattle inside there. So when we install this, we use caulk, and we just do a little bit on each end and in the middle, the type of caulk that doesn't dry. And that kind of sandwiches it in there, keeps it from moving around, and then we place our fingerboard on top. So it's a relatively simple process. Again, like I was saying, we don't have a perfectly straight line. It's a functional channel. You have to have it thin enough to where the truss rod will sit in there and not move around a lot. And that's exactly what we have right here. We could have got a tighter line on the router table, but it makes it a lot harder when you're trying to do a line that has a tapered edge, because this depth can only go so deep, and then we have to drop to a deeper portion for the channel at this point. So it's exactly what we need for this. I used double-sided tape to keep this firm against my bench, and you will need a lot of that if you're doing a build. At least I would recommend using a lot of that, because it's a great way, a non-permanent adhesion, to keep your work where you need it, stabilized, without using clamps that get in your way. I couldn't use clamps on something like this with the router. So I'm going to go ahead and cut out the outline here, and then we'll be right back. Okay, so we got the rough cut on the bandsaw, and then I took the template, double-side taped it to the blank here, and I used the router with a guide bit. A guide bit, I don't know if I've covered this yet. It has a bearing. I don't know if you can see this. Let me try to focus this here. It's kind of dark. So there's a bearing on the bit, and that follows the template on the top or on the bottom, depending on which bit you're using and whether you're coming from the top or bottom. And then it cuts to that pattern, so you get it completely flush with the pattern that you want. So on my router table, I used a top bearing bit where it's up here, and the template was on the top, and it guided along and cut it flush. So we have a neck now that is, the outline is completely flush with the template, and truss rod channel is routed. Truss rod fits in nice there. So now we can move on to the fretboard. We already marked the center line of the fretboard. These edges were jointed, so we should be good to go. We got to mark the nut, mark the fret slots. So with this, we're going to be joining this up with the body. Make sure we have our 25.5 inches, so we know exactly where we need to mark everything at, starting with the nut, and then we work our way down from there. The customer wants to try to get 23 frets out of this guitar. It might be a little bit hard. As I mentioned before, on the body itself, hopefully you can see this, on the body itself, where the saddles meet up, and the saddles on the bridge, this is where the string comes out, and that point of break, where the strings meet the saddle, that's one point of the distance. It's almost like a bridge. The other point of the string distance is at the nut. So I have it marked right here on this line where the saddles, where the line of saddles are. That has to equal 25.5 inches to the nut. So basically what we're looking at here, so right about there is 25.5 inches. Now that works out about right for where our nut mark is at, because I have this marked for the back of the nut. And our nut, I mean, that's just about perfect there. So this is a fret scale ruler, and you can see that, well, hopefully you can see, it's marked 25.5 inch fender. So all the fret slots are marked out. You line this up right off with the nut, and that tells you how many frets you're going to be able to get. So with this particular neck, on the neck blank itself, we're going to get 22 frets. I can do an overhanging fretboard. I'll show you what I'm talking about. So the nut is going to line up right about there. 22 frets. We're going to have one right off of the body blank. And then the 23rd fret right there, we could do it. We could extend the fingerboard out, but eventually we're going to run into the pickup and we can't have that. So I'm going to see what I can do. I'll get a hold of the customer, and we might have to make this one just a 22 fretter. But we'll see what we can do here. So the next thing is marking the fret slots. I can at least mark them, and then I'll finalize everything else before we actually cut. So I'll see you in the next video.